Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the important things when you're looking at your corn production this year is getting the nitrogen rate just right. We'll talk about calculating that rate that will work for your farm.
We also want to discuss wheat broadleaf herbicides. It may be getting close to time to spray or is time to spray on your farm, so we want to talk about some of the old options as well as some of the new choices you have for your farm.
Well, new choices are always good when you're facing a tough weed like our Weed of the Week. We'll discuss controlling this weed later in the show, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we'll talk about gibberellic acid and a specific product called Rise Up Smartgrass.
When you think about gibberellic acid, it's one of those growth hormones that can really help a grass crop. So when we're talking about it, it's usually pasture grass or wheat or corn, something like that, not soybeans and alfalfa. With grasses, what we see from the root system is the roots will produce gibberellic acid naturally and then send that up the plant for stem elongation. When conditions are cool in the spring, we don't move much of that gibberellic acid up through the plant, so you'll see green up out in a pasture, or you'll see green up in a wheat field, or you'll see early growth out in a cornfield where the corn is still a little bit on the pale side. And then later on, when temperatures warm up, then that gibberellic acid will naturally start coming. So applying a product like Rise Up Smartgrass can get stem elongation happening sooner.
All right, so with this gibberellic acid, and the reason why we're talking about stem elongation is this is huge in terms of tonnage. So it doesn't seem to make a lot of difference in terms of grain production in most cases. But if you are a farmer or a rancher who's interested in more tonnage with grass out in your pasture, more tonnage in terms of silage or something like that, hey, this is a big deal. And Darren mentioned spring, but let's also think about fall. We have the exact same issue in the fall with pastures. So what we're talking about here is daytime temperatures in the 45 to 65 degree range. Just think about those cooler temps in the spring and in the fall. What we're saying is there isn't enough gibberellic acid to produce the type of stem elongation that you would like to see to maximize tonnage. So by simply adding this natural product on top of a grass plant, it will push growth, and then you'll end up with more total tonnage by the end of the year.
I like that you mentioned natural product because this is something that could be used in organic production or conventional production. And the other thing is it's a natural growth hormone. So it isn't something that you say, well, I'm going to have more stem elongation. Now I'm going to be more prone to lodging or tipping over. No, we don't see that with Rise Up Smartgrass. We actually see those stalks being sturdier. So really the only concern that I've seen from our experience on our farm has been when we've used other growth hormones in too close an interval with Rise Up Smartgrass. Since it is a plant growth hormone, there are certain stages that you want to use it in, and you don't want to mix it with a whole bunch of other stuff. So if you've got other plant growth hormones that you're putting out there, say in the furrow or in a seed treatment, you want to wait until we get to V2 or V3 corn. Now we're far enough down the road that we aren't going to have an interaction with the things we did early.
All right, so specifically what we're talking about here is gibberellic acid. There's a product called Rise Up Smartgrass that contains gibberellic acid if you were going to use that product, for example, and there are others out there too. But if you're going to use Rise Up, the rate would be 0.3 to 0.5. I prefer the 0.5 ounces per acre, so half an ounce per acre. That's going to run roughly $4 to $5 an acre. So it's pretty inexpensive. We have seen good gains with this. It's something we absolutely encourage you to try on your farm if you're after more tonnage with grass or silage.
We also want you to strongly consider getting our Weed of the Week under control right away. If you have this tough weed on your farm, it can really rob yield. Can you identify this week's weed?
One of the biggest yield limiting factors on farms is even crop emergence, and only one closing wheel will get your growing season started right. Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheels from Copperhead Ag are proven to yield better than standard rubber tire and cast iron closing wheels in all conditions. With yield gains that give you a return on investment the first season, there's no reason to run a standard closing system again. Visit copperheadag.com today to get your 2017 growing season started right.
Tired of that old warped poly boom ruining your spray applications? Express Boom from Hypro is a fully assembled stainless steel boom that ensures an even application of chemicals every time. Don't wait another season, upgrade today. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Dealers, repair shops, and other ag parts resellers, this message is for you. Looking to save money on your parts purchases? Parts Express can help. We have over 3,000 popular items for tractors and combines priced at a level to save you and your customers money. In this tough ag economy, who wouldn't want to save on parts? Parts Express prides itself with old-fashioned service and an easy-to-do business with environment. Go to parts-exp.com to see our parts offering and become a Parts Express dealer today.
We love the quality, we love the construction. We're looking forward to working with Morton in the future.
They have this down to a science. They know exactly what you want. They know how to make it happen. It's an easy process.
I would definitely recommend Morton. From the first time I met the salesman to the last nail that the crew put in, it has been a positive and professional experience.
I'm so happy I found Morton because they just make the job so easy.
Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
Aerial fungicide and insecticide application means high speed, low volume, and high cost to reach the top of the plant canopy. But 360 Undercover is a low speed, high volume application system that provides precision placement under the crop canopy. You hit the target and get coverage on both the top and underside of leaves. Plus, 360 Undercover mounts to the boom of your self-propelled sprayer so you or your ag retailer can get more value from this important machine. Boost efficacy with 360 Undercover. Learn more at 360yieldcenter.com.
The most talked about nutrient when it comes to raising corn is nitrogen. But how much nitrogen do we really need to apply?
Well, that is the trick, and so today we want to talk just a little bit about what's in your soil, what's going to be in your soil, and how much you should apply and when.
Okay, first of all, what is out there in your soil? If you raised soybeans, for example, last year, and you're going to raise corn this year in a field, how much nitrogen is left in the field after that soybean crop? Well, there's only one way to find out. That's getting out and taking a soil sample and looking for the nitrogen content in that soil. Now, if you said, well, hold on, I just raised soybeans, there should be a nitrogen credit following soybeans. Let me tell you right now, there is no such thing as a nitrogen credit following soybeans. What's happened over the years is that there's been kind of a general rule of thumb that people have said, well, soybeans are about 40 bushels on average across the country. There's roughly a pound of nitrogen left for every 1 bushel of soybeans, so you should just figure 40 pounds of nitrogen are out there in your field. Why would you do that when you could actually measure it with a $5 soil test? If you go and pull a soil test for nitrate nitrogen, you can see what's out there, and then you'll know exactly. Maybe there's 100 pounds left from last year's crop, and maybe there's less than 10 pounds. You really need to know, because that could be a big difference for your corn crop this year.
Well, I think one of the reasons why people talk about a nitrogen credit for soybeans is it's actually the other way around. There's no nitrogen credit for soybeans, no such thing exists. But what I'm getting at here is if you're corn on corn, there's a lot of high carbon residue, and bacteria are going to tie up that nitrogen, at least in the short term. So you're going to need more nitrogen if you're in a continuous corn type situation, or just there's a high carbon residue out there, whether it was wheat straw or something else. So a lot of times you have to figure an extra 50 pounds or more above and beyond what we're going to talk about today, just as kind of a standard nitrogen recommendation if you're in that situation.
All right, let me get back to the soil test, because there's one other thing you should really pay attention to on the soil test. It's the organic matter in your soil. Let's just say, for example, you have 4% organic matter in your soil. Well, with 4% organic matter, there is going to be some mineralization that happens throughout the year. That's a breakdown of some of that organic matter that releases some nutrients in your soil. Well, how much? It's hard to tell. It depends on how much heat and moisture and how long your growing season is. A lot of factors go into that. But for a general rule of thumb in the upper Midwest, we use the number of 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen will come available from each 1% of organic matter. So if you have 4% organic matter in your soil, take that times the 20 to 30 pounds of nitrogen, that's 80 to 120 pounds of nitrogen that could come available in your soil this summer.
Well, that said, if let's say you're in Canada, a really cold environment, or you have other soil factors that are against you like poor drainage, it might only be 10 pounds. But the point is your soil will release some nitrogen for free every year. You've got to calculate that in. The other thing is Darren mentioned on the soil test, look at soil organic matter. Well, there is one other factor that you need to look at on the soil test. So now we're up to, hey, look for nitrate, look for organic matter, but also look for cation exchange capacity. That'll tell you roughly how much nitrogen your soil can hold at any one time. So for example, if you find an 8 CEC or cation exchange capacity of 8, multiply that times 10, so 8 times 10 is 80. Well, if you can only hold 80 pounds at any one time, and let's say you already have 30 out there, that means you should only apply about 50 pounds right now. And sure, if you're right at the time when the plant is going to be using a bunch of nitrogen, you can probably push that a little bit. Using nitrogen stabilizers allows you to push that a little bit. But the point is now you've got a number to shoot for that you don't want to overdo. And I think that's a really important thing because in the past, people have just looked at, well, I have light soil, I can't put much on. I have heavy soil, I can put a lot on. Well, how much is a little? How much is a lot? I mean, it's all a guess. So this gives you a much more exact number to target.
Well, the real number that you need to be targeting in your field is what's your estimated crop yield? Let's just say in this example that your estimated yield is 250 bushel corn. Well, how much nitrogen does 250 bushel corn need? According to numbers from the International Plant Nutrition Institute, which you can find on the Ag PhD Fertilizer Removal app, 250 bushel corn actually needs 280 pounds of nitrogen. Now that 280 pounds, that includes what the grain is going to remove, but also what your stover needs. And you have to keep in mind how much your plant is going to need just to produce all that plant growth that's going to hold that ear right until harvest and feed it all the way through. So you need to be able to get 280 pounds of nitrogen out of the soil to raise 250 bushel corn.
Okay, so if you need 280, you have to subtract off what you started with, what's going to come available through organic matter mineralization, and then also if you have a high carbon residue problem, like let's say it's continuous corn, well then you're going to need some additional nitrogen above and beyond. But I mean, it's really that simple. So take what you need, subtract off what you've got already, what you're going to have through organic matter, and pretty much there you go, unless you got to factor a little bit more in for loss or something like that. So the more that you can fine tune this nitrogen thing, the more that you can split apply and get it applied relatively close to when the plant is going to need it, the more you can cut back on your overall nitrogen use. And don't get us wrong here. We're not saying, oh, every farmer is over applying N. We absolutely do not find that. Many farmers are under applying nitrogen. All we're trying to say is a lot of the old recommendations where it's just, okay, 200 bushel corn, I need 200 pounds. I had soybeans last year, subtract off 40 bushels or 40 pounds, so I need 160, bam, that's it on every acre. No, that's not the case. And then in addition to all this, we talked about soil testing in the fall or in the spring, but also use a pre-side dress nitrate test or some other management program like Farmer's Edge or something like that to help you fine-tune that nitrogen amount you need on a per acre basis late in the year.
Well, getting your nitrogen rate just right is great for your profitability and also for the environment. You also won't leave any extra nitrogen out there to feed weeds like our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
Sometimes getting the yield you want means you need a whole new game plan. Think about it. When the older conventional fertilizer you've been using goes head to head with tough soil conditions, they can get all tied up before they ever have a chance to score. That's when it's time to regroup. Time to send in the A-Team. AgroLiquid isn't like other fertilizers. Their nutrient-balanced products stay in the soil in the right formulations in just the right amounts. And because of AgroLiquid's unique chelation technology, you wind up using less and seeing more in your yields. So you could wind up having one heck of a championship season. Make a smart start with AgroLiquid. To find the closest nutrient coach near you, visit agroliquid.com.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
My, how things have changed over the years. When Brian and I were growing up and raising wheat, it would be, well, we've got a couple of options. We can spray 2,4-D would be the cheap one, or we could spray some Bucktrill if we really wanted to.
Yeah, and now we have two much better options. There's Husky, and then there's also Wide Match. So today we want to talk about those two products, and then also some new options you have, as well as, I think it's important, Darren, to say why we don't like 2,4-D and what's wrong with Bucktrill also.
Let me start by talking about the oldest product that we mentioned, 2,4-D. Now, 2,4-D used to be such a cheap and easy to use option. A lot of farmers just say, well, I'm going to use 2,4-D. I can kill a lot of the broadleaf weeds and it doesn't cost me much money. Those parts are true. The problem with 2,4-D is it does injure the wheat plant a little bit. Now, in corn production, we used to use 2,4-D until we had a safer option. As soon as we had a safer option, almost everyone switched away right away from 2,4-D. Now we've got the same thing going on in wheat. We've got lots safer options than 2,4-D. So that's one of the things that I want to talk about today is we don't really need the 2,4-D anymore. We have good broadleaf control options that aren't going to injure the wheat.
Yeah, and we're not saying that 2,4-D is going to take 10 bushels off your wheat every single time. It's possible occasionally, but usually we just figure 1, 2, 3 bushels, something like that, more than enough to give you some extra dollars to pay for something that's better and safer anyway. Also, we mentioned Bucktrill. We're not real big on straight Bucktrill. Yeah, it's very safe to the crop, but the problem is it's got a real narrow weed spectrum. So unless you only have lambsquarters out there and a few large-seeded broadleaves, Bucktrill isn't going to cut it.
All right, well, don't totally badmouth Bucktrill, Brian, because Bucktrill's great in combination with other products. So you look at something like Husky, for example, that you mentioned as being one of the good options. Well, it does have some Bucktrill in there, but it also adds an HPPD broadleaf killer. Now, the HPPDs have been widely used in corn, but haven't really been used in crops like wheat until we had Husky. So now we've got this Bucktrill HPPD combo that's one of the best products on most of the broadleaf weeds that we're going to fight out there, except for Canada thistle and maybe kochia.
All right, in addition to Husky, there is the new Talinor from Syngenta. That has the new bicyclopyrone HPPD along with Bucktrill. So that's a decent option. If you like Husky already, might be worth giving Talinor a try.
Yeah, I was leaving the door open for you, Brian, to talk about Wide Match because I said, well, the weakness of those products may be Canada thistle and kochia. Not that they're terrible, just that they aren't great. Wide Match, on the other hand, is great on those two weeds. The problem with Wide Match is its weed spectrum is fairly narrow, so there aren't this huge portfolio of weeds that it's going to be great on. But when Canada thistle and kochia are probably the two most widely spread weeds across the wheat acres, well, it is a pretty nice broadleaf option.
All right, so usually what we suggest in combination is one of the ALS herbicides, something like Addition, Tank Mix, or Broad Spec, along with the Wide Match. That usually works out pretty well, so you broaden the spectrum a little bit. So basically what we're talking about today is you've got two great choices in wheat that we commonly use, either Husky or Wide Match. You can go Husky by itself, or if you're going to go Wide Match, we'd usually suggest throwing a little something in. I know the temptation is to throw 2,4-D in. We'd encourage you to use an ALS instead.
We talked about products that you should use that are good options. There are also some that we suggest you don't use, like ones that have really long soil residual. But some guys say, well, I like products like Finesse and it fits in my area. Hey, it can really mess up your crop rotation.
So Dow this year, for example, came out with Culex. That's a combination of an ALS herbicide and a Group 4. That'd be in the same family as 2,4-D, the Group 4, 2,4-D and dicamba. So Culex is pretty good on a lot of the winter annual weeds, and hopefully it's going to replace Finesse in some areas of the country.
There are a lot of choices for broadleaf weed control and wheat. Hopefully you've found some that will control our weed of the week. We'll show you which ones will work best coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is common lambsquarters.
Lambsquarters is one of those weeds that starts out fairly early in the season, and we see it across really all cropping systems. We see it in no-till, we see it in conventional till, we see it in overgrazed pastures, crop fields. It's all over the place, so you got to get it under control. Now, the best thing with lambsquarters is we can do a good job with pre-emerge herbicides in most crops.
Yeah, the nice thing with lambsquarters, it germinates pretty shallow in the ground. It's one of these small-seeded broadleaves, so a lot of times you can get pre-emerge herbicide concentrations high in that top half-inch or inch of soil, high enough to control lambsquarters at least fairly well. Probably not going to be perfect, but it's going to be pretty good.
Since we just talked about wheat, let's start there. You could start off with Sharpen Down. That would be a good pre-emerge herbicide that would have residual as well.
Yeah, although Prepare is not too bad in wheat either. In soybeans, we really like the 3 Pre's. Use a yellow. Those are all good and have good activity. Metribuzin does as well, as does either Valor or Authority. So by combining all 3 of those, you should have 99.9% control on lambsquarters. Then if you go to corn, we really like Verdict, but many products will do well. Even the straight old grass killers, Harness, Surpass, Outlook, and Duo.
Now, in post-emerge, in wheat, I really like Husky and Talinor. In soybeans, post-emerge, well, the best option is the old Pinnacle or Harmony product or Harass. There's a lot of different names because it's gone off patent. And then in corn, the best option that I've found has been Status, although you could use the HPPDs as well.
Yeah, especially if you throw a little atrazine in with those HPPDs, they're pretty darn good too on lambsquarters.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
In life, when you put the max in, you get the max out. It's no different for your corn, which is why 40 years of effort have gone into proving that Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers do more than just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize nitrogen, so your corn gives you the max in return.
Introducing the Soil Max ZD48, the newest addition to the Soil Max Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The Soil Max ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
At Farmer's Edge, we believe you can never be too prepared. When it's time to hit the fields, you can't afford to have anything hold you up. That's why we take a proactive approach and provide unbeatable support with our Field Ready service. We visit your farm, ensure your equipment is VR ready, and install can plugs before you get going. It's another way we help you grow more precisely.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
With the new formulations of dicamba, spray tank cleanout will be important. However, of all the cleanout issues, there is one spot on the sprayer that causes problems more frequently than others. We'll talk about it in today's Iron Talk. For the most part, spray tanks get cleaned out pretty well. However, the booms are a different story. They often get forgotten about completely, and we've all seen the V-shaped pattern of injury heading into fields where the previous spray solution slowly flushes out of your boom as you begin to spray the next field. Now that's no fun. The injury that keeps happening all across a field, or injury that pops up several fields after a change in products or crops, that's the one that really stings. Where did the problem come from? That's a good question. However, here's the number one thing almost everyone needs to do better. It's cleaning out the ends of the booms. Nasty, solid junk is in the ends of almost every boom I've ever seen taken apart. It's so predictable. Nobody seems to do a great job cleaning there. Now, the crazy thing is there's a 100% effective solution available, and people aren't talking enough about it. Hypro has a product called Express End Cap. It eliminates the dead ends that lead to herbicide buildup that can be so difficult to clean out. Express End Cap also greatly improves the reaction time of your spray nozzles to turn on and shut off by eliminating trapped air. One way or another, be sure to clean out your spray booms well each time you're switching products this year. It will likely save you from an embarrassing and costly spray contamination issue on your farm. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. We're on Sirius XM channel 147 each weekday at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Crop residues from previous crops are highly beneficial to our soils and the environment. As residues break down naturally in the soil, they release nutrients for future crops, but can also become organic matter in the soil, providing nutrient and water holding capacity and a home for soil microbes. Visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org to learn how farmers manage crop residues.